Hello Tennos, and to my Chinese friends, 新年快乐. Welcome back again to another video on Warframe, and today we are talking about Sentients. Just so you guys know, before I actually make a video, I always do some research and I checked if there are similar videos out there in YouTube to avoid repeating contents so that you guys do not see things that you already know. Although there are other videos on Sentients out there, I felt like I have a little bit more to share, so I decided to make one hoping that it would help you guys understand how to fight them better. Right now you're actually watching me farming Sentients, and this is how it looks. Bet you didn't learn much from it. I could tell you that I'm using Excalibur after War on Fire, and a Galatine Prime with corrosive and cold damage, and also a life strike. But even if you manage to copy what I just did, you wouldn't be able to be creative and try other things that could maybe be even better if you do not know the details of my actions. I also find it very hard for people that, let's say, do not have a strong weapon. Like for example, my Galatine Prime is very well upgraded and you can only get it at MR13 to pull this off. I guess the first thing you need to know is that there are two types of Sentients that you'll be fighting. One is called the Battalyst, another one is called the Conculyst. And the Battalyst is a ranged enemy that shoots explosive electrical orbs and occasionally unleash a omnidirectional laser beam that deals radiation damage that kind of looks like a disco ball. And then there's also the Conculyst that does melee impact damage and could perform a whirlwind attack. And what it does is basically spins around, and while he's spinning he is invulnerable. Okay, they can link among themselves to share the damage taken, and they can adapt 95% of any damage types up to 4 different damage types. They have arms which you can break by shooting the joints coming out of their heads, and if both of the arms are broken, they cannot perform their main basic attacks. Over time, they will pick them up and reuse them again as usual. I wouldn't recommend actually breaking those arms unless you are using a skill like Loki's Disarm. Now, to counter the fact that I might be using a better weapon and Warframe, I will be fighting with a level 135 Sentient instead of the usual level 30 that we would normally farm at the plateau. The logic here will be that if I could kill a level 135 Sentient, you should be able to deal with a level 30 Sentient. I'll be fighting each of them, the Battalyst and the Conculyst, one at a time to demonstrate a few Warframes that is good for this, and finally I'll try something crazy and fight one without any Warframe abilities. Just so you know how strong a level 130 Sentient is, here is one Conculyst in action. Yep, they can pretty much kill most of my frames in one hit, so do bear that in mind. So I'm going to talk about Excalibur first, and the reason why is because I find that it is one of the best, if not the best, Warframe against Sentients. Okay, and it's all because of its Exalted Blade and Radial Blind, and that's pretty much how I modded it. It's all based on that 2 skill. Over here I have the Tigris Prime, and it's purely for precaution, and I actually won't be using on this Warframe. The way I modded it is just make sure that the elements does not clash with your melee weapon. And on the melee weapon, I pick one that works well with the Excalibur's passive, and then something that could attack really quick so that the shattering impact will kick in really soon. I also have corrosive on it because the Sentients will initially have ferrite armor, and the corrosive will help to boost a little bit more damage, but it doesn't really matter because the moment shattering impact kicks in, they will be stripped off their armor. Now, one thing you have to keep in mind when fighting the Conculyst is that when it starts spinning, it is invulnerable, so you just want to make sure you keep your distance and just pretty much wait it out. Okay, and the moment it stops, you could start attacking, and the moment it comes close enough to you, you just want to blind him and you'll see a lot of damage coming out. Now the reason for all this damage is because the moment it gets blind, it starts getting stealth damage. Okay, now I'm going to show you the other Sentient, which is the Battalyst, and I also would like to explain why Exalted Blade is so good. Now the reason is because that it will take your physical base damage and spread them out equally to all 3 physical types. So for example, if you have a really high slash damage, he'll take that high slash damage and distribute all equally among the impact, puncher, and also slash. So that means when the enemy adapts to one of the physical type, damage type, you'll still have about 66% left. So for the Trinity, you want to have some survivability mods because you might be taking 1 or 2 hits, and then you want to have a lot of duration mods. The reason why is because you'll be using Energy Vampire, and then what this pretty much do is it renders the Sentient useless. So the longer your Energy Vampire lasts, the longer the Sentient stay useless. Okay, then you want to have a good primary weapon. Basically use it to do damage after the enemy has adapted to your melee weapon damage. Okay, then you want to have a good melee weapon. Now in my opinion, the Boltace is not a very good weapon for this case. Okay, but this managed to prove a point. That means you do not really need a really good melee weapon or anything like that. Just make sure you have a Shattering Impact. If it's not a good weapon, it'll just take a longer time, but it'll pretty much do the same thing. Now there is one drawback of this technique. Although it's very safe and everything like that, the drawback is that you can only do this on 1 Sentient at a time. Okay, if there is 2, you're gonna have a lot of trouble, so make sure you go in with a partner or something like that. But this method is really safe, and what I do is I will just keep hitting until the enemy has adapted to 3 different damage type from my melee weapon, and then I'll just whip up my primary weapon and kill it with whatever elements that make sure it's not the same as your melee weapon. Okay, now for the Conculyst, you want to make sure that when it's spinning, you do not cast your Energy Vampire, because that will cause it to malfunction. Not the Sentient, but your Energy Vampire will not actually cripple it, so it doesn't work that way. So, and if you do it, then you have to wait quite a long period of time, depending on your duration mods, for the Energy Vampire to actually wear off before you can recast it. So yeah, and then you pretty much do the same thing and kill it. Now next Warframe that I want to talk about is something that you guys probably saw coming. It's Loki, and the reason is simply because of invisibility. And yeah, because when you go invisible and the Sentients do not see you, they either do not even move when you attack them, or they'll just run around and they'll not attack you. So basically you can do whatever you want to them and they will not do anything to you, which is really OP. I have my primary weapon, which still do whatever it does all this time, and I have a better melee weapon, which is the Guillotine Prime. Slightly slower, so the Shattering Impact will kick in a little bit later. Now this time I'm gonna deal with 2 Sentients instead of 1, because well, they can't do anything to me anyway, so why not? You can actually do this with other invisible frame as well. I think Ivara is not bad, especially when they start moving around. You can actually use Sleep Arrow to stop them, but do keep in mind that the more Sleep Arrow you use, the more resistance they have to the duration of the Sleep Arrow. Same thing with the Rhino Storm. And okay, what you saw right there is that before my invisibility actually expire, I will use Loki's Disarm to make sure that they cannot attack. Now they can still use certain skills like the Whirlwind or the Disco Ball thing, but there is some casting time, so while that is happening, you can actually just kind of zip away. Now something else is happening right now is that they actually use Link, and while I was attacking the Battalyst, the Conculyst actually died because of the Link. And there is something shiny on the floor, and it's actually whenever a Sentient dies, the bright light or the orb at the middle of the sentient will fall on the floor. If you pick it up, it will regenerate your shield and your health. If you do not pick it up, the other partner or any other sentient can come over and pick that up and regenerate as well. Okay, so that's what happened just now. And there we go. So it's time for something crazy, and what I do here is I'm using Inaros to fight with a Battalyst with no Warframe skills, just basically the items that I have on and also Life Strike and Rage combo. Okay, and what's interesting is that at first it was really hard because my damage isn't high enough to give me enough life steal to compensate from the damage that I'm taking. But then over time, the Shattering Impact starts to kick in, destroying the armor and then causing it to have no damage reduction, allowing me to do more damage, and then I could sustain my health. But then again, after a while, the enemies start doing that whole adaptation thing, damage adaptation, and then my damage starts to go down again up to a point where I'm actually taking more damage than I'm actually life stealing. And but still I try to hang on and just keep doing damage until basically it uses all 3 adaptation gates on just my melee weapon, and then I switch over to my primary weapon and kill it. So while that is running at the background, I would like to talk about the Ember Prime and why am I using it in the mission instead of the other awesome sentient killer Warframes that I just showed you. The reason is simple. It's because I have a really good weapon and it's good enough to kill level 30 sentients easily. And it's because of that, then my Warframe will be focused on clearing the mission more than just killing the sentients. Because there's no point if you could kill the sentients really quickly, but you spend like half an hour doing that mission. So I pick a frame that could do the mission really quickly, and then I use a weapon that is really strong, so I pretty much could do it really quick. So the whole farming experience is more efficient. Now, there is another tip that I would like to say is that if possible, play it with people or play with friends. You know, don't go in alone, because not only will things speed up a little bit if you are with people, although I know the enemy counts also grow as more people enter the squad, but then because if you have more people, there's a probability where there will be more sentient spawn. So therefore, not only could you clear the mission a little bit faster, hopefully, but you could also stand a higher chance of getting rare mods because there are more sentients to drop those rare mods. Fighting the Conculyst is a lot more challenging than the Battalyst, simply because the damage is a lot higher, and I cannot lifesteal fast enough to cover the health I'm losing. It took me a while, but I finally realized that I could only pull this off if I could block some of the attacks. But besides the heavy weapons and the weapon with shield, other weapons can't block enough damage either. So to my surprise, I finally found a weapon that could fulfill this role, which is the Axe and Brunt. Fast enough to break the armors with Shattering Impact so that I could start life stealing, and strong enough to block some of the damage to keep me alive. This is the only melee weapon that passed the second gate of adaptation. The technique I use here is basically to block the first 2 attacks and take the third one, which will heal my energy with Rage, and I will also need to quickly attack it back to heal back my health before the next 3 attacks from the enemy. Sadly, at the end, I still have to resort to kiting, which is basically hit and run. Before I go, I'd like to thank everyone because I hit 600 subs. Oh yeah. And well, there's one thing that I also need to let you guys know is that my YouTube notification doesn't seem to be working properly, so I seem to be missing out some of the comments. I only saw them when I checked on the video itself. So if it's something important, you could just feel free to tweet me at my Twitter account. The link is at the description below. So yeah, once again, this is Zelp wishing you a pleasant day, Tenno, and I'm looking forward to see who manages to kill a Conculyst without Warframe skills first. Take care. Bye bye.